Pretty Girl Club, welcome back to the Pretty Privilege series. If you really like this series and you like this subject, be sure to subscribe to my Patreon before the prices go up. They've already gone up once and they are going to be going up again. The reason that I have a separate Patreon is because Patreon is a little bit less censored than YouTube. So that's where we talk about all the spicy topics. That's where we talk about some naughty topics. Just I don't have to worry as much about like the algorithm and like getting flagged on there. So if you want to go more in depth, or if you want to be able to ask specific questions and have me create an episode based on your question, be sure to join the Patreon. But I want to talk about pretty privilege versus smeggsualization, because I see a lot of black women on YouTube claiming to have pretty privilege or discussing it as a subject. But then when they start describing their experiences, they're actually conflating smeggsualization with pretty privilege. A good example of this is that woman who recently celebrated being essayed. That is not pretty privilege. Someone wanting to dominate and subjugate you in the bedroom is an example of smeggsualization. So what I really want to touch on here is smeggsualization versus romanticization. Pretty privileged women are romanticized. That's the difference. So if you are being romanticized, you're going to have the man wanting to parade you around. You know, he wants to be seen with you. That's why a lot of escorts and ex-workers are pretty privileged women. So whether they are surgically pretty privileged, whether they're naturally pretty privileged, doesn't matter. But the bottom line is they are being paraded around and promoted. People push you to the forefront when you have pretty privilege. You get visibility when you're pretty privileged, but when you're being smeggsualized, it's the exact opposite experience. You are invisible. You're his dirty little secret. You know, you're the one where he doesn't want his friends or family to know that he's talking to you. He acts different when he's in front of his friends and family. He will sleep with you, and then the next day he will ignore you at the function. He ignores you in public places. He does not want to be publicly associated with you. He doesn't want to be seen in pictures with you. He doesn't even want you to take pictures with him and put them on your phone. That's the difference between smeggsualization versus romanticization. So both of those are two different types of fantasies that men have about women. By the way, this video is going to be talking heavily about the male gaze. So if you don't want to hear me talk about that, please go back to my Decentering Men content. I just uploaded some videos on that subject as well. But a man who is just smeggsualizing you, this is the type of man who only gives you attention when he's turned on. A really great way to know the difference between pretty privilege versus smeggsualization. How do you get treated when he is not turned on? How do you get treated by women, by heterosexual women? Do you have a strong reaction? Because if so, that's a form of pretty privilege. But sexualization is where he's nice to you when it comes time to have sex. And then as soon as he's done, he gets up and leaves. He doesn't want to have pillow talk. He doesn't want to sit there and look at you. Another thing that's a big difference between pretty privilege versus sexualization. Pretty privileged women have men staring at their face. So he's looking at you. He's making eye contact with you all the time. He's staring at you from across the room. Sexualized women have men just staring at their ass. Okay, so he's not making eye contact with you. He has a hard time making eye contact with you. Maybe you're talking to him and then some other girls walk by and then he starts looking at them. He's making eye contact with them. He's breaking his neck to look at the pretty privileged women. So that's another difference between pretty privilege versus just being sexualized or fetishized. Another aspect of smeggsualization is you feel like you are more replaceable. So he can just go get any black girl and sleep with her. He could just go get any big booty girl and sleep with her. If you are just in the category of being smeggsualized, you're gonna realize that that man, he wants more novelty. He needs more novelty. So what I've seen is a lot of women who are not pretty privileged, they will pretend to be bi. They'll pretend to be into women, or they will pretend to be poly so they can keep that man from cheating, or, you know, they try to open up their relationship because they feel like by doing that, that's going to help satisfy him a little bit more. So all of that, those are problems that come with being smeggsualized. But if a woman is being romanticized, I've noticed that you get put on a different type of pedestal. So, for example, when you change your hair color as a pretty privileged woman, that is the form of novelty. So people will actually comment and say, oh, wow, you changed your hair. Oh my gosh, your makeup is different. Oh, wow, you're doing a different type of hairstyle. Oh, I've never seen you in that color before. So people notice a lot more small details about you when you have the pretty privilege. And part of it is because you're just more noticeable, you're more visible, you are more aligned with that person's internalized beauty standard. And I've also noticed that when you're pretty privileged, people are just very intrigued by you in general. You know how women who are sexualized, they have this opposite experience where nobody's intrigued by them. So the sexualized women, they have to try to create that mystery. That's why you see those videos on YouTube where they're like, how to be mysterious, how to create mystery, how to captivate him. Well, it's because she doesn't have the beauty to captivate that guy's attention. And so she has to find all these other random ways to try to create this aura around her. She has to find these grandiose ways to create mystery. But when you are pretty privileged, you're already being romanticized in that person's mind. You're already being pedestalized in their mind. So there's already an element of mystery about you because fantasy is different from reality anyway. So that person has to get to know you more in order to uncover who you are behind that pretty face. Who are you behind your pretty hair? Who are you behind that beautiful body? So you already have this element of mystery. Have you ever noticed that when you're pretty privileged, people will call you mysterious when you've done nothing to be mysterious? You have not purposely tried to hide anything. You might even be, you're an extrovert and you're still getting called mysterious. It's like, what? How am I mysterious when I'm literally just walking down the street? I'm literally just showing up to work. I'm not doing anything different than anyone else. And I've noticed what people really mean when they say you're mysterious. What they mean is, I want to know more about you. I want to know more about you. Who are you? I want to know what your hobbies are. I want to know what your passions are. You intrigue me. But if you are smeggsualized, there is no intrigue there. It's more so about, okay, how can I get my needs met? It just tends to be more transactional in nature. So that man is less likely to inconvenience himself to come and see you. Women who are smeggsualized, they often have to do all the work. You know, they're doing all the labor. So she's the one who always has to drive to his house at 2 a.m. so she can sleep with him. Women who are smeggsualized tend to make more sacrifices just to get attention. So, you know, she has to sleep with him. Basically, the man has a lot more power in a smeggsualized setting. That's why you see a lot of men who specifically go for low-status women. They go for the women that they think have lower social status. They go for the women they think are less pretty because they get to smeggsualize those women and basically use them as their real-life sex slaves. And another thing, too, when a woman is being smeggsualized, she feels more competitive. Whereas a pretty privileged woman, it's the exact opposite, where she feels like she stands out automatically. It's almost like other women feel competitive with her because she's pretty privileged, but she doesn't necessarily feel the same way. And then that's why people say she thinks she's better. Well, it's because she's not competing with anyone, because she knows that she has the pretty privilege already. So you're mad because she doesn't see you as competition? Well, you just admitted then that she does have the pretty privilege. Another difference is that the pretty privileged woman, because she's romanticized, she has a lot more experience with men having a crush on her. When you are romanticized, that man, he has a crush. What does that mean? He's thinking about you. He's trying to impress you. He's over here lying about his income just so he can impress you. He's over here lying and saying he doesn't have kids just so he can get access to you. He's driving hours or flying across the country so he can see you. He's going out of his way, inconveniencing himself or taking time away from his video games and his basketball and whatever so that he can get access to you. That's a sign of romanticization. By the way, I don't know if I'm saying that word right. I don't even know if that is a word. Romanticization? Being romanticized? He's romanticizing his encounters with you. There's more hope. People attach more hope to you when you are pretty privileged because they want your validation. They hope that you notice them. They hope that you approve of them. Another sign that you have pretty privilege is that people try to get your attention even if it's in a negative way. They're trying to antagonize you more than others versus women who are smeggsualized. Most women feel like sex is kind of like a base desire. That's a baseline thing. Everybody has a vagina. Everybody can have sex. So that's not a big deal. So that's why if you're just being smeggsualized, nobody sees you as a threat in the same way. But if you are being both smeggsualized and romanticized, okay, well, yeah, now that's a threat because you have something that that other woman doesn't have. You're more captivating. That's why when people talk about beauty, what does that even mean? When they say, oh, you're beautiful, well, it means that you are captivating. But if somebody says, oh, you have a nice ass, oh, you have nice boobs, oh, well, I like big girls because they're good at giving head. Okay, that's smeggsualization. When a woman is being smeggsualized, there's a lot more focus on her body parts. And that's why you hear a lot of sexualized women saying, oh, well, I have a big booty. Oh, well, I have an hourglass shape. Oh, well, I have bigger boobs than you. Okay, well, yeah, of course you view it as a competition to have the biggest ass because you are used to just being sexualized. That's your sense of social power, which is fine. I mean, I'm not putting it down or anything, but there's a difference though. So I'm not putting it down. I'm not trying to put it on a hierarchy, but I am going to highlight the difference on this channel so that I can attract the right audience. Another difference between being smeggsualized versus romanticized, when she goes on dating apps, she has to do a lot of bikini pics, a lot of booty pics, a lot of up close shots of her butt or her boobs, like thong bikinis and all that. And then all of the pictures are decentering her face. All of the pictures have decentered her phenotype because maybe she had to manipulate her phenotype in the photos. So these women, maybe they're using a lot of filters. They get accused of catfishing. They can only take pictures in certain lighting. They can only take pictures with certain hairstyles. So that's a sign of smeggsualization. A woman who relies on being smeggsualized because she has decentered her face from her photos. She has decentered her phenotype from her photos. She doesn't mind if she looks like a totally different person and gets called a catfish. Okay, so her face has been decentered. Her phenotype has been decentered. Yet you want me to believe that that woman has pretty privilege? Pretty privilege based on what? Having a pretty ass? Having pretty boobs? Okay, that's smeggsualization. Those are smeggsual body parts. So that's another difference. When you have pretty privilege, I feel like there is a little bit more leeway. So for example, you don't have to be perfect if you're pretty privileged. Being pretty doesn't equal perfection. But I've noticed that the smeggsualized women, they don't understand that because they don't have pretty privilege. So they think your wig has to be perfect, makeup has to be perfect, teeth have to be perfect, everything has to be perfectly laid in order for you to get a second look. But if you're pretty privileged, you already know what I'm talking about, where you could have a pimple and you still get attention. You could have be a little bit chunky and you still get attention. You're a little bloated, but you're still being romanticized. The pretty privileged woman is viewed as kind of like a muse. So a muse is like the type of woman that naturally inspires other people. Have you ever seen those videos where women are like, how to inspire your man? Okay, you don't have pretty privilege because beauty is naturally inspirational. If your presence is not inspirational, and if your face and your whole look doesn't inspire others, then you don't have pretty privilege by definition. Because people are inspired by beauty. People travel across the world to see a sunset. They go on vacation so they can go to a beautiful beach. So people revolve their lives around beauty. People save money so they can buy beauty or go to beautiful places or have beautiful children. So if you're telling me that nobody's inspired by you, nobody wants to look like you, nobody has you as their body goals, nobody has you as their makeup goals or their hair goals or whatever, then you don't have the pretty privilege because beauty in and of itself is aspirational. Beauty in and of itself inspires others. So if you have to go out of your way to do all this stuff to inspire a man, I'm trying to inspire him to text me back. I want to inspire him to get me a gift. Okay, you don't have pretty privilege. You're just being smeggsualized. You're being utilized for his smeggsual gain, and that's it. Something else that happens when you are pretty privileged is a lot of people, they want to show you off as quickly as possible. So Have you ever made friends with somebody and then that girl, she wants to introduce you to all of her other friends. She wants to bring you into the friend group. She's talking about you all the time. Oh, yeah, this is my new friend, Sarah. She's a cheerleader. Oh, yeah, that's my new friend, Tiffany. She has long hair. Oh, my friend is light skinned. Oh, I have a friend that's biracial. Oh, I have a friend that's mixed. Okay, anytime somebody is bragging about you when you did nothing to earn that, they're bragging about you, you're absolutely privileged. You have something that they are romanticizing. There's something about you that they're putting on a pedestal. That's why they're bragging. I don't see people bragging about how unattractive their friends are or bragging about how unattractive their partner is. Another thing, too, is that a lot of DL and bisexual or incel men, they want to make you their girlfriend very quickly so they can brag about you. A lot of like DL men will try to use pretty privileged women in order to prove that they're straight. So they try to get the prettiest woman possible to be their girlfriend. And so I've also noticed that, especially if you look like in Hollywood and stuff, a lot of times you have these men who are into men and they're trying to perform masculinity. Having access to you makes him feel more masculine. A lot of men judge other men based on how their woman looks. And that's why you see them making fun of all these dating coaches and stuff who have ugly girlfriends. Because they're like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be an alpha male, right? You're not an alpha male if you can't attract a beautiful woman. Number 7, a woman who is sexualized tends to have inconsistent pretty privilege. That's what I call it. So if her hair's not done, pretty privilege goes out the window. If she gains 10 pounds, pretty privilege goes out the window. If she has an acne breakout, pretty privilege goes out the window. Okay, so that's a sign that she didn't really have pretty privilege, because my definition of pretty privilege is really a woman who has multiple sources of beauty. So it's not just one thing. It's not just your skin tone. It's not just your melanin. Oh, I'm dark skinned, so I'm automatically beautiful. No, the way that pretty privilege works in society is usually a woman has 2 or more sources of beauty. So maybe she has a pretty face and she has a pretty body shape. So maybe she's not skinny, but maybe she has a pretty body shape and a pretty face. Maybe she has pretty hair and a pretty face. Maybe she has pretty teeth and she also has a pretty waist to hip ratio. So I've just noticed that usually if people are calling a woman pretty or beautiful, there's usually more than one thing about her that's pretty, despite what people try to say. And also, both groups of women get stared at. So for example, if you notice that a man is staring at you, okay, what is he staring at? That'll tell you if you're being romanticized or sexualized. Is he staring at your face? Is he staring at your face, your hair, looking you up and down? That's kind of like looking at the whole package, face all the way to your toes. Or did he just glance over at your boobs and then he looks back at what he was doing? So what exactly is it about you that's capturing the attention? For women who are smeggsualized, it's their body parts that are capturing the attention. And that's why you see some women going to get these giant BBLs. Not the normal BBLs, not the skinny BBLs. I'm talking about the super dramatic, huge BBLs where your butt looks like a shelf. Why do you see some women getting those? Well, because they know that that's being sexualized and they enjoy the attention. You know, they enjoy when people look at their butt. They like that. That makes them stand out. So it's just a question of what exactly is making you stand out? What exactly are people staring at? Because if you have a nice butt and a nice face, you're probably in the pretty privileged category. You're not in the sexualized category. Usually women who are just being smeggsualized don't have the face card, or at least their face card is inconsistent. You know, so maybe from one angle she looks really good. Maybe she only has one good angle. But then when she turns to the side, or maybe she doesn't have a pretty smile, or, you know, there are so many different things that can take somebody from the pretty privileged category to the smeggsualized category. Another difference is that when you're pretty privileged, people actually want to look like you. They're trying to copy your aesthetic. They copy your makeup. They're copying your hair, copying your phenotype. They're trying to copy your workout, your diet. It's almost like people want to jump in your skin when you have the pretty privilege. When you are smeggsualized, people want to copy your moves. They want to copy how you dance. They just want to copy how you twerk. They want to copy how you crop up your boobs in that push-up bra. They don't actually want to look like you. They don't want your level of social status. It kind of depends on what you want or like what your social climbing goals are. But I would say, generally speaking, people do tend to have more social status when they are pretty privileged versus just being sexualized. Because remember, the person who's just sexualized, she stays in the shadows. She is his dirty little secret. She's the one where he doesn't want anybody to know about her. He doesn't claim her. He doesn't tell his friends, oh yeah, I have a girlfriend. Especially if a pretty privileged woman comes around, he acts single. He acts like he doesn't have a girlfriend. He acts like she doesn't exist. And another thing too, when you're sexualized, if you age, aging becomes a big problem when you're just being sexualized. When you don't have pretty privilege, you're not fine, you're not pretty, you're not gorgeous. Maybe you're just being used for your body parts. Once those body parts begin to sag or get wrinkled or you gain weight or whatever, you become discarded. So I've noticed a lot of women who are heavily smeggsualized tend to have the biggest fear of aging. I don't notice the same thing with pretty privileged women. Like Halle Berry, Sade, Vanessa Williams, all these women, they are older and still pretty, and they still have pretty privilege for their age. I don't see those women going out and resorting to getting gigantic boobs. And, like I didn't see Halle Berry trying to get huge boobs and a huge BBL in order to save them. But a lot of women who are just smeggsualized, sometimes you do see them falling into plastic surgery a lot more. So maybe they have one BBL, then it starts to sag. Now they have to get another BBL, or they have to go bigger this time. Or, same with the boob job. They have to go bigger and bigger. Any body part that is smeggsualized, sometimes you'll see these women tweaking that body type. So like with the lips, getting the extreme lip filler. Well, your lips and your mouth, that is a sexualized body part. So that's why sometimes you do see a lot of strippers and ex-workers and stuff getting their lips done to the extreme, because a lot of those women feel like maybe they don't have the pretty privilege, or it takes longer to invest in the pretty privilege if you don't have it. And I will admit that. And that's why you see a lot of women who are rich and they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to attain pretty privilege. It's easier to be smeggsualized in our society than it is to be pretty privileged. Because think about all the different types of beauty. You got your eyebrows, literally you can enhance everything about yourself. So it's very tedious. Pretty privilege is very tedious. The journey to beauty, it can be very daunting. It can be very overwhelming. So I've noticed a lot of women who don't want to invest the time or the effort into pretty privilege, they will just settle for sexualization. They don't want to spend the time growing out their hair. They don't want to spend the time doing all the hair masks and getting rid of all that acne and cleaning out their gut and losing weight. And they don't want to do that. They're like, you know what? I'll just have a big ass. That's fine. I'll just rely on my boobs for the rest of my life. I'll just do OF, or, they'll go to these platforms where being smeggsualized has a lot of privilege. And I am not downplaying that. I'm not saying, that you're wrong or whatever, because women have to survive. But I have noticed, though, that a lot of women who are on OF, like only a certain percentage of women are the top OF creators. And I have noticed that the top creators in the X-work industry, they are actually pretty privileged. They're not just sexy, they're also pretty, like Ruby Rose or like, I don't know, Cardi B. All these women who they kind of do X work, but then they also are like in the industry or whatever. Those women have pretty privilege. So I will say that pretty privilege opens more doors for you in society, whereas sexualization, it only opens certain doors. So most women, they kind of come to a crossroads where they have to decide, like, okay, do I want to just keep spending the rest of my life being smeggsualized, or do I want to try to transition now into something else? I feel like pretty privilege has more of a fluid identity versus smeggsualization. And you can still attain wealth. You can get, like sex sells, but whenever they say sex sells, the examples that they use as being quote unquote sexy, those women are actually pretty privileged. Like Tyla, or like, I don't know, Rihanna or Beyonce or something. Those women, they're still pretty privileged, and they're also talented as well. That's why I talk so much about privilege stacking. For the exoticals, I don't want you to only have one privilege. I don't want you to just rely on skin tone. I don't want you to only rely on Smeggsualization. So that's why I talk about all the nuances and the pros and cons of each one. It's because I don't want you to be like other groups. Let the other women, let them just rely on their ass. That's fine. Let the other girls do it. But if you want to have a nice ass, I want you to also have a nice face and be smart and be, like have other things going for yourself so you can diversify your sources of micro validation. For those of you who have been following my channel for a while, you've heard me talk a lot about micro validation. That's just kind of a term that I just made up, basically. So what that is, it means that you're getting a source of validation, but your life doesn't depend on it. It's something small. It's kind of like a snack. It's kind of like something that's nice to have. It's like an emotional snack. So you're not going to feel empty without it, but it still is a benefit. So pretty privilege has more sources of micro validation versus sexual privilege, because think about it. Sex is often shamed in our society. Women are very shamed for their sexuality in our society. So would you really want to focus your whole life on your sexual body parts or how sexy you are? Like, do you really want to focus your whole life on that? Probably not, especially as a woman. And especially if you're not working in the X-work industry. The only time that makes sense is if you are literally in the X-work industry. And even if you want to get to the top of that industry, you still have to have pretty privilege as well. But if you look at pretty privilege, people utilize beauty in non-sexual settings. The biggest difference between pretty privilege versus sexualization is pretty privilege works even if you're not having sex. Because think about it, companies, real estate agents, they often try to recruit pretty women. Receptionists, they're trying to recruit a pretty woman to be the receptionist. When it comes to modeling, non-sexual modeling, people who like Instagram influencers, fitness influencers, lifestyle influencing, all that shit, that has nothing to do with sex. They're not selling sex. They're literally selling protein shakes. You know what I mean? So there are so many other sources of income, and there are other sources of status that you can have when you're pretty privileged. I've noticed that a pretty privileged woman tends to have more of a diversified status versus an ugly woman who is being sexualized. Another difference is that pretty privileged women can be sensual. I've noticed if you're pretty privileged, you tend to rely on sensuality versus sexuality. So being sensual, an example would be like wearing a silky top or something, whereas sexual is wearing no top at all. No top, no bra, boobs out. Do you see the difference? One is sensual and then the other is sexual. And that's part of why they say that when you're pretty privileged, you already have this sense of mystery, because there's still a part of you that's covered up. Pretty privileged women are also treated with more dignity. People are more likely to believe you when you're pretty privileged. If you're pretty privileged and you accuse someone of SA, or if like let's say you've been SA'd, let's say there's something going on in the legal system, they even talk about how women who are pretty privileged, they literally get less jail time. Some people even get bailed out, or, people are naturally, they're giving you the halo effect. I don't know if you guys know about that, but basically it's like where people positively stereotype you because of your beauty. And I feel like if you're being sexualized, it's the exact opposite. People negatively stereotype you. They think that if you got SA'd, they don't believe you. They believe that you were lying, or that you were just being a hoe, or that, you had to wear something that was too sexy or whatever. So somehow it's your fault. Okay, that's a sign that you're being sexualized. If someone is beautiful, people naturally come out wanting to protect that person. Like, people want to protect beauty. Have you ever noticed that? Even in nature, they try to protect the rainforest and all these beautiful places, all these beautiful historical landmarks. They've got the conservation people that try to make sure that those landmarks are protected. So if you are a pretty privileged woman, it's almost like you're a walking landmark. You're like this walking princess who a lot of people will put on a pedestal, but then there are going to be the people that try to protect you as well. And that's why pretty privileged women get away with bad behavior. And that's why they call men Captain Save-A-Ho. They call people Captain Save-A-Ho because they feel like that pretty privileged woman, she behaved badly by being a hoe, and it's not fair she got to get away with being a hoe. One of the main complaints of sexualized women, they get mad because they feel like it's not fair that pretty privileged women get to be hoes and get away with it. Or they got to have their hoe phase and then now they're not a hoe and then nobody cares. or maybe they were an ex worker in the past, or, they have some sort of bad past, and then they were able to be forgiven and kind of start over. A lot of sexualized women are complaining about that because they don't have the pretty privilege. Have you ever noticed that when you're pretty, people forgive you more easily? Think about it. Even how people treat their children. If you have a really cute baby, if there's a baby that's so cute, even though that baby's annoying, they actually say that an adult is more likely to forgive that baby, or like even teachers in elementary school, they're more likely to give the cuter kids like extra attention, and they're more likely to help the cute kids one on one. It's just a natural internalized bias. Another thing about smeggsualization is when you are being sexualized, there's always a time limit on sexualization. Obviously, it is looked down upon to sexualize children. But when you're pretty privileged, you could use pretty privilege at any age. You could be 13 years old in middle school and be using your pretty privilege. Those are the popular kids in school. Those are the prom queens and all that. That's more so pretty privilege as an underage person. And then same thing when you're an old lady. You can be a pretty old lady. You can be a beautiful woman that's middle-aged, or, you're aging gracefully is what they call it. So you can use your pretty privilege throughout your entire life. And all you're doing is you're using your pretty privilege within an age-appropriate way. Whereas smeggsualization, I feel like there's a time limit. Some people feel like, no, you're only sexy from age 18 to, I don't know, 45 or whatever age. And then after that age, it's almost like people feel like there's a cutoff. And they talk about the wall or whatever. A lot of men who talk about that, these are misogynistic men who just, they sexualize women. They don't necessarily value women for their beauty outside of the bedroom. They don't really view women as human beings. They kind of view them as just sexual objects. So that's why they feel like, oh, you hit the wall. Why? Well, it's because I don't want to have sex with you anymore. So that's why you hit the wall. That's literally the core reason why they say women hit the wall. Or they'll be like, oh, she made bad decisions by being impregnated by other men, so now I don't want to have sex with her anymore. So she hit the wall. Another difference between pretty privilege and sexualization is that men tend to use sex as an escape, or they use it as just a coping mechanism. That's why they're not really promoting or doting upon the women that they are just sleeping with. They're not doting upon those women unless she is a paid ex worker, but this is not a video that's really focused on paid ex workers. But they don't tend to dote upon those women because she's not viewed as like a princess. It's almost like when you're pretty privileged, there's like this princess stereotype that you get. In fact, some people might make fun of you and call you a princess. Or they might nickname you that. They give you all these little pet names and stuff when you're pretty privileged. And then when you're being sexualized, sometimes they give you degrading nicknames. Like bitch and whore and slut, and, they're doing race play and all this stuff. It's more likely that you will be degraded if you are relying on just smeggsualization and you don't have any pretty privilege. And then when it comes to romanticization, like a man romanticizing you, remember that in order to be in a relationship, you have to also pick him. So that's a part of why some people get mad. They feel like the man is going out of his way to impress you. Well, yeah, it's because he wants you to pick him as your boyfriend. He wants you to pick him as your love interest. And have you ever noticed that a lot of women who are sexualized, they get jealous of who plays the love interest in movies? Well, yeah, it's because she's never been a love interest, or she's never seen her image represented as a love interest. She's only seen her image represented as being sexualized and degraded. So the love interest is someone where he wants to impress her, he's going out of his way, he's being thoughtful towards her. Being thoughtful, that is not really a part of a sexualized woman's life. She's not really used to people being thoughtful for her, unless they're paying for her body. And that's a part of why on this channel, when I talk about pretty privilege, I'm not just trying to talk about it in terms of the male gaze. I genuinely believe that pretty privilege can help you to survive, because our society worships beauty. So, if you can use your beauty to socially advance from lower class to becoming middle class, it happens all the time. There are so many pretty women from the ghetto who were able to blow up, or they were able to make money because of their beauty. So I promote pretty privilege as a way to help yourself be more economically successful. And I also talk about a little bit of investing and stuff, but that's more so on the Patreon and members page. But another difference is that pretty privileged women are stereotyped as being classy, whereas if you're smeggsualized, you're stereotyped as being trashy. If you're pretty privileged, you're stereotyped as being feminine. If you are smeggsualized, you're stereotyped as being masculine, ratchet, ghetto, hard. People are finding it hard to emotionally connect with you. That's because you don't have pretty privilege. If you have pretty privilege, people naturally get an emotional reaction to your beauty. Some people react well to beauty and some people hate beauty, so they react badly. That's another thing too. Pretty privileged women trigger incels. That's another way to know if you're pretty privileged. If incels are extremely rude to you, so I told you guys a couple of my stories about how in a couple of my jobs, I've had incel men working at the job being extremely rude to me. One time there was an IT guy that was really rude and disrespectful. Another time it was a business manager who later admitted that he was basically attracted to me and liked me. So that's another thing. When you're pretty privileged, you get more of an emotional reaction out of people. You have emotional power over others when you are pretty. Isn't that crazy? That's insane. The fact that people are so emotionally triggered by beauty, they either love you, or they hate you, or they want to destroy you, or they want your validation, or they want you to love them. That's what romanticization is. He's romanticizing you. He wants you to love him. He wants you to admire him. So he's buying you dinner to win your admiration. He's getting you gifts and he's being chauvinistic. He's trying to humble other men so that you can admire him. If you are a pretty privileged woman, your admiration is very valuable. Have you ever noticed that some people get mad when you don't acknowledge them? Why? Well, it's because they really want to feel admired by you. They really want to feel seen by you. That's why they get mad when you don't speak to nobody. That's what they'll tell you. You don't speak to nobody. Oh, well, she spoke to everybody else except me. She responded to every other comment except mine. She gave everybody else a shout out except me. When you're pretty privileged, you are the center of gravity. You're like the center of the social gravity in that room. And that's why I say that being pretty privileged is like being a mini celebrity. That's another difference. When you're sexualized, you're not a mini celebrity. You're trying to fight your way into Hollywood. It's like you're trying to sleep your way into being treated like that celebrity. You're trying to sleep your way onto that pedestal. You're trying to sex your way onto the pedestal. You're trying to twerk your way onto the pedestal. And I'm talking about women who are not ex-workers, because at least ex-workers are getting paid. There are women who are out here doing all this shit for free. Twerking, putting up nude pictures or whatever, texting guys pictures of their asses, unsolicited, not getting paid or anything, getting nothing out of it. So there's more of a desperation. Every woman wants to be beautiful, by the way. I've never heard of a woman who doesn't want to be pretty at all. She wants to be ugly. I've never heard of that. I've never seen a woman who wants to be repulsive and ugly. So any woman who tries to say looks don't matter, beauty doesn't matter, she's a liar. She's a non-pretty privileged woman. She's either scared of her own beauty or she's scared because your beauty outshined hers. Okay, number 8. Sexualized women are getting breadcrumbed, whereas pretty privileged women are doing the breadcrumbing. Big difference. Okay, so the sexualized women, they're trying to get a text back, whereas pretty privileged women don't even give out their numbers, or, they have to block a lot more men. They have to not respond. Pretty privileged women have to filter through more men trying to talk to them, whereas the sexualized women, they always have this issue where it's like they feel like they've given their all. I've noticed anytime a woman says, oh, I gave him my all, okay, she means sex. I've never heard a woman say she gave her all and then she was celibate and never had sex with a guy. Okay, so a lot of sexualized women feel like they gave their all just to get nothing in return or to get breadcrumbs, whereas with pretty privileged women is the exact opposite. You've got men vying for her attention. You've got women plotting against her or plotting to get into her friend group so they can get access to men. Or they just want to get access to status. When you are pretty privileged, a lot of people want access to you. They either want access to you or they wish they could trade places with you. They wish that they were the pretty girl in the office. They wish that they were the pretty girl at the Grammys. They wish that they were the pretty privileged man. Like, I know of a lot of men who are jealous of women. A lot of men talk about this on their channels. They talk about wanting to be Chad. I guess Chad is supposed to be some sort of like attractive, pretty privileged man. So a lot of men are online complaining about not having a male version of pretty privilege. So most people, they want to either date you, they want to sleep with you, or they want to be in your place as a pretty privileged woman. It's almost like they either want to date you or destroy you when you're pretty privileged. It's pretty much just those two categories. They want to date you or they want to destroy you. But if you are smeggsualized, I feel like people are ashamed to be associated with you. People feel ashamed to be called a hoe, or they feel ashamed to be called a homewrecker side chick. Oh, that's another thing too. In terms of relationships, I've noticed a lot of sexualized women, they either, like, the best they can do is usually like maybe friends with benefits, one night stands. That's what their social life entails of. It's usually friends with benefits, one night stands, situationships, maybe a side chick if she can. But I've just noticed that that tends to be the main thing. Or if they do get into a relationship, I've noticed it does tend to be fetish based. And so if she loses that thing, like, that's why you see a lot of big women, when they lose weight, they lose their boyfriend. Why? Well, because she was smeggsualized. That's why. It was based on her body looking a certain way and her self-esteem being low. So as soon as those two problems get solved, then suddenly she loses that man. So for a lot of sexualized women, you would think that they would have people in their lives all the time, but it's the exact opposite. I've noticed that a lot of sexualized women, they tend to get ran through and kind of used a lot. They tend to get ran through a lot, kind of used up a lot. And so a lot of them resort to emotional numbing. So maybe just using sex as an escape, or they dissociate and then they say, oh, I don't care what happens. I don't care about my own body. You know, I'll just sleep with everybody. Almost like this Sexy Red type of mindset. But these women are not, they're not being paid. Sexy Red is being paid. She's rich. But most women, they're not rich and they're not getting paid. They're just doing this stuff for free. But what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.